Okay, dear Dhamma friends, welcome to Kalalgoda English Medium Retreat. We have received several written questions. We will start the question and answer session with written questions.
Avasarai Swamin Wahansa, we have received one question. Thero Saranai Swamin Wahansa, walking meditation, stood on one side of the path, felt the coldness of the sand to the feet, came to the other end, stood little bit and turned to walk back. Felt how the feet's movements. When one is on the ground, the other is up. When both feet on the ground, the body doesn't move. While walking, thoughts come to mind and again back to the feet. When started the walking, there were so many thoughts and wandered. But later there were few thoughts. Once suddenly there was a current like a wave started to appear in the head. And little later the same wave started to move in the feet too. Body became little tight and upper body felt like one big stone. Still the body moved. Legs were very light and they just moved. Walking happened naturally. Once felt the breath and also felt some itchiness in the mouth area too. After about 40 minutes of walking, came to drink a cup of tea. Sitting meditation. After the walking, came and sat on the cushion, felt the air touching the body and the pressure of the back. Body started to sway side to side and also front and back. Again it started like a swirl. While having all these movements in the body, thoughts and sanya also appears. Whenever entangled in a thought and back to the body, there's a sudden shock like an effect happen to the body. While observing all these in the mouth area, the muscles started to move. It was moving up and down. The entire body feels empty and calm. Here and there the breath also can be noticed. Whenever after a sitting there's some energy built up in the body and wants to release it by stretching the entire body. Body wants to release that energy and sometimes due to that have to end the sitting. Please advise me, Bhante, to continue further.
Yeah, I think these things are normal because when we are meditating, certain sort of energy can build up and certain parts of the brain get energized or we can say stimulated, so that we feel like certain kind of energy being built up and say certain chakra or circles, kind of circular energies being generated. So such manifestations can happen, but anyway as we move forward, these things become more faded. So at the beginning, when our body and the mind are sort of recognizing these changes, so it appears like triggering, it appears like something different and strange. But as we move forward, so these things become very faded and sometimes they simply go away and they don't even appear, but we simply have kind of a very natural awareness, and it can even lead to some deep concentration as well. But what the information mentioned, the indications are quite positive. So it seems that you are improving certain amount of concentration, and that indications are there. Certain indications are there representing certain amount of concentration is developed. On the other hand, you can improve further on the walking side, because in the walking side is where we can sort of dissipate all these pent up energy, because during the sittings sometimes it is more tense towards the concentration and you can get more and more deeper concentrations. But while in the walking path, so you can be very relaxed and just walk and just be aware what is really going on, and try to pay attention to each and every momentary experience of your legs, particularly how your legs are touching, So that is where you are able to more become natural, because in the sitting it is somewhat little artificial like, because you are in a cross-leg situation, posture, and you are trying to be aware of your breathing. So little bit of a artificial generation of awareness is there. That is necessary actually. But later, everything become very, very natural. But immediately we can't go to the very natural kind of awareness because that will promote thinking. Because at the beginning we have so much of distractions. So in order to minimize distractions, we are selecting certain kind of object, that what we call as primary object, Mula Kamathana. So that primary object becomes our sort of the main attention, or our kind of oasis. Each and every time we are trying to keep our attention onto that primary object. But later, once you are develops fair amount of mindfulness and again fair amount of concentration, you don't necessarily be with that primary object. You can be with any other object, and you can start to observe how those other objects also behave. So that helps us to develop fair amount of insight, and later you don't even need primary object, and you don't even need any other object. So mind recognize certain kind of awareness which doesn't need any kind of an object or doesn't need any establishment. So that is the beauty in a way. So till we reach such state, we are always holding something, we are always hanging on to something. So actually when we are going with that, certain amount of pressure is there, certain amount of tension is there, certain amount of grasping is there. But slowly we can eliminate that grasping once we realize certain disadvantages of this whole process. So that is a kind of natural thing. You can't simply get rid of all the attachments, all the grasping, even though you theoretically know that. So you have to go through a kind of a practical process. Then the mind recognizes, okay, these things are sort of tense, these things are kind of a burden, everything is very vulnerable, things are arising and passing away, so no point of attaching. So the mind itself naturally relinquish. Then mind become more and more relaxed. Till you reach that, certain amount of tension is there, friction is there. Now what you are experiencing, certain muscle movements in the face and those kinds of things, we can say are such manifestations. You simply have to bear them, and as you move forward, things will disappear. Yeah, so that's all we have. Questions, is it?
Same report, Swami Mahansa, that's the experience also.
Right.
So can I read
Sure,
that?
sure, yeah.
3 weeks ago was down with COVID and symptoms started to appear in a funny way. It's like one at a time. It helped to identify the body painings and also mind chattering. Observed very well, as it was like someone talking from deep inside. Body aches in every muscle. Started to stretch the body as much as possible. All these things happen naturally. Even though it labeled as severe, it was a blessing to identify all the factors showed in the body. Much merits to you, Bhante, for all the guidance you give us to walk in this path. May all these blessings will definitely shower you to attain the nirvana in this life. Theruvan Saranai.
Yeah, actually many yogis are taking this whatever the disease, whatever the illness they go through, sometimes into the the better way. Rather than suffering, they are using it as a kind of a learning experience, so that we can recognize, we can understand some deeper teachings. So we can connect with certain incident happened during the Buddha's time. There is one person called Nakula Pitu, so who closely associate the Buddha, and he once reached Buddha and explained what kind of suffering he is going through physically. So he is now old and aged, and going through fair amount of diseases, illnesses, and he come and report to the Buddha, Bhante, I am pretty difficult and body is so weak, many illnesses are there. So he complained in a way, not really complain, kind of reporting. And then Buddha mentioned, this is so, this is the situation, and even though your body is ill, can you keep the mind free from ill? Free from any illness, healthy in a way. Body is ill, can't help. Can you keep your mind free from illness, free from any mental agitation, free from any tension, free from any mental suffering? So that is the target that we have to try. Because we can't stop our bodies getting sick. So that belongs to the nature, and whenever certain things go wrong, when any imbalance happen, so body gets sick. That we can't avoid. But when body gets sick, can we keep our mind without suffering, without really going through kind of a tension, any agitation? So that is also difficult. I mean, even though we can say so, it's also not easy, because there's a huge combination, there's a strong combination between the body and the mind. When the body is not really supporting, so your mind also get really somewhat unbalanced. So still are we able to avoid suffering? So this is a very interesting point. So again Buddha mentioned now, when a typical person, a worldly person, or a person who doesn't know much about the Buddha's teaching, doesn't have any practical experience, whenever he go through the bodily suffering, Buddha mentioned, on top of that he add another suffering. What is that? Mental suffering. So it is very much like Buddha mentioning, like when someone is being hit by an arrow, so there's another arrow he is hitting to the same place, then is more suffering. Severe suffering happens because you are hitting to the same place by another arrow. So on the other hand, when another person who has well learned and who has practiced the teaching, and he too go through certain amount of bodily suffering, but he doesn't have the second arrow. Only the first arrow is there. So first arrow seems common to everyone, that we can't avoid, but the second arrow is the problem. Second arrow is present only with the person who doesn't have any experience, doesn't have any practice. But the practitioner should try not to have the second arrow, not to hit by the second arrow. So mostly, the suffering happens when we are taking it so personally. Why am I suffering? Why this COVID? When it is going to finish? It is happening only to me. I am suffering. It doesn't happen to the other person. So you are comparing with another person. So he recovered within several days. Why am I suffering so many days? It's not fair. So likewise, a kind of inner chatter building up, proliferation building up, more with a kind of a self-centered thinking. That self-centered thinking causes more suffering even than the real bodily sickness. So if we can recognize that self-centered thinking and to minimize that and just to bear the physical suffering, then we can actually manage it. So there's a bodily suffering, can't help, but I can manage it, I can endure it. So that is the better approach that we can go through. So it seems that the report explains such a situation. So the body is suffering, so COVID is there, can't help, but let me be peace with it. So this is the way it is, isn't it? Body is subjected to all different situations, ups and downs, bodily sicknesses, aging, decaying, and ultimately death. Can't avoid. So can we have sort of peace with this whole process? And the other thing, recently I think maybe through a Zen teacher or someone, so he has mentioned beautifully, now even today, even on yesterday, or even 10 years ago, even 100 years ago, now if you consider the society, is it perfect? But we think, no, tomorrow let it be perfect. Don't we think? On tomorrow at least no power cut. Tomorrow at least no wars and no political issues and no queues. And so we have kind of a feeling. So I may get a better tomorrow. Tomorrow should be no suffering. So we are going on and on, thinking that there won't be suffering on tomorrow. But if we are able to recognize, okay, the world is imperfect, so this is the conditioned world, this is the sankhara. So with sankharas, with conditioned phenomena, you can't have perfection. So people are trying to get the perfection. So say million years ago, I don't know, maybe 5,000, 600,000 years ago, still people tried to get the perfection. Didn't achieve. Then say King Dutugamnu's time, still tried to achieve perfection. But still the problem came, no? I mean, even during the, say, 50 years ago, still the problem has come. Then after, say, in this government, or 2009, so the whole, say, the wars in Sri Lanka situation finished. So are we still in the perfect situation? So you can't say. So kind of a vulnerability is there in this conditioned world. So when we understand that nature, when we understand really this conditioned world is imperfect, can I be with peace with this imperfection? Situations are imperfect, so rather than being agitated with that imperfection, can I be peace with such imperfect world? Can I be peace with this person who is not perfect? So we can take it to that level also. Now say you are dealing with another person, your husband, your wife, your children, your teacher, your partner, whoever. So sometimes we are expecting too much, or sometimes we expect the perfection, but the other person also conditioned. I myself is conditioned. So all the phenomena we go through are conditioned. So we can therefore cannot have kind of a perfection. Instead of expecting perfection, can we live peacefully with that imperfection? Then mentally we can be with less suffering. So that is where the body become imperfect. It is a conditioned phenomena. It will always go through various situations, difficult situations. So with that imperfect suffering, illness, can I be peace? Can I be at peace? So this is something, a different approach we have to take. So rather than always expecting this to be that way, this way, so that expectation, that very expectation generates a lot of suffering. But we can accept it. We can accept the imperfection. Just be with that imperfection. Then there won't be much suffering internally. There won't be much suffering mentally. Then we can be peace with it. We can be peace with that person. We can be peace with that situation. So that's a different approach that in a way we can take. So certain amount of suffering is unavoidable. So Buddha talks about 3 types of suffering. The physical suffering, what we call as the dukkha. So certain amount of physical suffering is unavoidable. And then viparinama dukkhata, that situations are changing. If you expect kind of an unchanging, permanent kind of situation, then you are going to suffer. Because things can't exist as it is forever. Constantly they are changing. So there is a certain amount of suffering involved with this change. Viparinama dukkhata. And the other one is the sankhara dukkha. Sankhara dukkhata. So there is a suffering generates because of the mental formations. What do you think about that? Can you stop dukkha? Can't. How about the viparinama dukkha? How about sankhara dukkha? Can? Yeah. Yeah, that we can stop. That we can avoid. So that is a mind-made one in a way. So when we see something, we construct on top of it. We add more things to it. We subtract to it. We multiply that. We add our own ideas, likes and dislikes. So as a result of that, there may be some amount of either suffering or happiness. So as we move forward, as we are able to be more equanimous with all the sankhara. So there's a deep term as an insight called sankhara upekha. So there are various formations, there are different phenomena, but I can be equanimous with that. So then seeing is just seeing, hearing is just hearing, sensing is just sensing, isn't it? So and then the cognizing is just cognition. So at that situation, there can't be any kind of sankhara dukkha. So we are not constructing and getting unhappy. We are not getting agitated. We are not getting excited. Rather, we be with the situation as it is. So raw data. No, not manipulations. No manipulations, just the raw data as it is. So then in a way we can avoid that sankhara dukkha. So that is where Buddha talks about the sankhara samatha, calming down mental formations, reducing these formations, minimizing all these constructions what we do internally. So these are very interesting points actually if you go through Buddha's teaching and if you especially go through Vipassana meditation, how to minimize these formations, how to reduce these constructions internally, what we do. So these are the areas we can explore during our meditation, especially when we are going through the Vipassana meditation. Yeah, so that's all I like to add towards those questions. So if anyone has any comments or any other questions, we have enough time, or else we can wind up the session.
Actually, Swamin Wahansa, because I was down with the COVID actually.
You suffered with COVID? Uh-huh.
Yeah, with this actually, I saw it was, even the COVID was like, it's one at a time in the sense, that's why I mentioned it's one at a time. Today is something and the next day is totally a different thing. So I mean, even through that I saw the changes, what is happening, like today if you have fever, the next day the body aches, then the next day is totally body aches are gone, then you have some kind of a headache. Having that headache, so I mean, it was like that chattering actually, like I also couldn't, like at the beginning couldn't recognize it, but I was lying down on the floor because it was like kind of, it really helps that like stretching is more helpful, like kind of you really want somebody to like kind of massage you, like kind of a feeling like you really want to, it's the muscles,
stretch yourself.
Yes, stretch myself. So like at that time, like it's totally like heard it as somebody is talking, some like it's totally I can't remember what those, like the words and things like that. Another person is talking inside your mind, like it's like it's
gone
like
insane.
Yeah. Yes. It's because like I really heard those things, and like it started coming for about an hour. Like I was like doing kind of a meditation, like looking at it. So it
then it disappeared.
It disappeared. Yes, meditation helped me a lot to recover through that. Like even the body pains, I took it as like kind of a blessing for myself. It's like the entire body is like it saw as like the same. I mean, not like at one place is this and that. Like now, when you do the meditation, you feel your body is like kind of a rock-like a thing. It's just like that. So it's the entire body is the same, like same feeling you get. So I was like kind of giving my blessings to you, Swamin Wahansa, because for you and Lok Swamin Wahansa, that was like so much. It was a blessing in disguise. Like went through it so peacefully, like the COVID. I recovered within 4 days. I recovered. Yes.
So at Nissarana also we around 8 months infected. So and actually myself and Lokusana, I don't know, maybe we went through it, I don't know. Because I also, several days I got some bodily pain, kind of, I mean, you know, when you are about to get fever, that you have some bodily pain. So that I also went through, but quickly recovered. I mean, may not be COVID then, I don't know. Lokusana also said the same thing. So he also went through that. He said it's little bodily pain is there, but he drink this and that, you know, people are giving this and that. So he just drank that, and then no problem. Then he never wear mask and all this thing. He even blame me when I am wearing a mask, so I am also not wearing now. So interesting. And now
even because my son got it first, Swamin Wahansa, and then like I was like kind of
looking after him,
and then my husband got it.
Then you got it.
After 10 days only, I thought I will not get it actually.
You are an Iron Woman.
So finally I got it.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, couple of yogis, I mean, there are resident yogis, some male yogis, and I don't know whether they got the same thing, but they left because they got bodily pains and they understood something is now going to happen, so they left. Three of them left actually. Then several us also infected, and only one monk actually went through the severe suffering. He is an old monk who actually ordained at his late age, around 55 or something, but during the lay life he is a heavy drunkard, so therefore his lungs are not so sort of strong, so he went through severe suffering. We had to admit him to the hospital, and around 2 weeks he was with oxygen, but he recovered also. So these things are there every time. Even during the Buddha's time, you probably have heard about that ahivataka. Even a very severe, when COVID started, people thought, okay, this is very much like that. So it's an infectious disease, and no one can escape. Only if you are leaving that place, then probably you have a chance of escaping. Ahivataka. So the whole, it starts with very small animals at your home, and they die, and then it comes to another large animals. So likewise, ultimately it infects to the householders. So likewise, now probably you have heard that is very beautiful story, maybe Samavati. Can't remember. There's a beautiful story that one little girl escaping from that, and then actually she belonged to a very rich family, but when she ran away from her house, nobody knew her, and later another merchant actually looked after her. So likewise, there's a beautiful story. I can't remember who exactly she is. Maybe Samavati. So these things are there every day, every time. So this is how it is. So we are going through the conditioned world. So we are in that. We are in the sensual world. We are in the conditioned world. So it's unavoidable. So that is where Buddha is teaching a different approach, how not to get infected, how not to get affected by the conditionality. So that is something we need to explore in a way. It is also not Buddha can come and offer it to us. Buddha has shown the path, so we have to explore it. We have to investigate it. How to reach there at least for a temporary period. How to be with peace, or how to avoid grasping and be free from conditionality at least for a small period. Then we have to maximize it. Can you imagine something like that? Being free from conditionality? So if you can't, sorry? Not necessary. Buddha says it is possible before near death. That is why Buddha mentioned when there is sankata, there should be asankata also. Like that he argues and try to sort of convince his disciples. Okay, if there is say mountain, there should be a what you call the valley as well. So if there is rain, there should be a kind of dry season. So like the opposite remain available. And Buddha mentioned, so if there is no escape from the conditioned world, typical conditioned world, then it's a kind of a lasting suffering. It's an everlasting suffering then. There can't be any escape. But there is escape. So that is how he argues. So since there is conditionality, there should be unconditionality as well. Since there is conditioned world, there should be unconditioned experience as well. So this unconditioned experience is explained in many different ways. Nibbana is one term, asankata is another term, unconditioned, unconstructed, ajara, amara, asankata, akata, asankata. So likewise, many different terms he uses. Ajara, it is, when someone is experiencing it, he can't experience a kind of a decaying of such process. Now say when I am drinking this tea, assume that I take a little sip to my mouth, then I have a beginning of that experience, and ultimately it will finish, right? So to our each and every experience what we go through have that nature. It has a kind of a beginning and then it change and ultimately it disappear. But when we are assume that we are able to be in that unconditioned experience, then we can't have such a variation in a way. I mean, there may be a get into that while being there, so kind of a beginning, the middle, the end. So beginning, middle, end is a conditioned phenomena. So if we are in unconditioned, then we can't have that kind of a situation. Then amara. So the death is there in the conditioned world. So death can't be there in the unconditioned then. Then kata and asankata. Akata. Akata means now something, all the conditioned thing is that you are doing, you are constructing. Now, akata means you don't need to do anything. It is there. So it's a naturally. I mean, you have nothing to do. Akata. And then asankata, that you are not constructing it. You are not manipulating. You are not constructing. You are not preparing. So it is there. I mean, when we are thinking, then we think how it can happen. So likewise, we get a lot of doubts. We get a lot of perplexity. But on the other hand, Buddha explained in a way that you may experience it. It is not that you imagine it. It is not that you think about it, but you experience it. So these are very subtle aspects of the teaching that we can actually explore. How Buddha is teaching, so this kind of a experience. Very interesting. No more questions. Okay, actually we are reaching almost 3. We can start our Dhamma sermon around 4 as usual. And then we can wind up this session and we'll have the Dhamma sermon at 4 p.m. Okay, thank you very much for participation.